Hi, and welcome to Men's World Today. The jobs market is a very competitive market. Not only are we up against other applicants whom we might perceive to be of the right age demographic, are better experienced than us, have better qualifications than us, we're also up against the current innovative technological disruptor, which is AI. And this is really giving employees food for thought in terms of productivity. So the challenge men face, particularly men over 40, is keeping our CVs relevant and as up to date as possible to secure a potential interview and a potential job offer. Which is why I'm extremely excited today to be speaking with Kevin Crucian. Kevin is the CEO of a global boutique executive search and recruitment business called Engage PhD Search. They have presence in Sydney, Los Angeles, and London. Kevin's early career was in sales leadership for some global companies like Dun & Bradstreet and the telecommunications company Cable & Wireless. Engage PhD places executives, sales, and marketing and product professionals in high growth tech businesses. Prior to Engage, Kevin was a director for a UK recruitment business with over 150 staff before he did a management buyout of part of the business in 2019 and created Engage PhD. Kevin splits his time between his UK team and his US team. So Kevin, thank you so much for finding time out of your busy schedule to come and talk to us on Men's World Today, sharing some insights in the jobs market.
Thanks for inviting me.
So Kevin, what are the most important elements men over 40 should include in their CV in order to stand out from the crowd?
So I think there's a common misconception with people of a certain age that they mustn't showcase themselves in a certain way. You have to make the CV very eye-catching. I would always suggest that you have a high-quality photo in there. You need to have a very strong opening statement. Remember, this is your opportunity to sell yourself, and it's very much like opening a book. If you look at the first couple of pages of a book, that's where you get grabbed and your attention gets captured, and then you decide you want to read on and finish the book. It's no different with a CV. So you have to make sure you've got a really strong opening statement that makes that reader want to read on. And there's a real importance in making sure that you have a fantastic LinkedIn profile to supplement the CV, because people are much more interested in seeing people's persona and how they put themselves across. And so investing time in a really good LinkedIn profile is really key as well. But if you are a certain age, make sure you're emphasizing things like what you do in your spare time. If you've only got to look around the gym. When I go to the gym, I'm 57 now. And there's a lot of 57-year-olds in there that look like they're in their 40s. And so there is a misconception sometimes when people get to a certain age that maybe they're past it, but they're really not. People keep themselves fit these days, and emphasizing those hobbies and things I think are quite key as well.
Oh, that's quite interesting to know, particularly talking about LinkedIn and highlighting your extracurricular activities. How can someone highlight transferable skills from having been from a long tenure in a single role, for example? People would have been in one position for so long and they're quite petrified to kind of even try to apply for a new job or look for a change.
Yeah, I mean, I can talk about personal experience where this is concerned, because my first role that I ever had was a junior level role with Dun & Bradstreet. I started off just doing an administration role. I ended up being there for 13 years. So I joined when I was 17 years old. I didn't have any qualifications, really. I didn't go to university. And I got to 30 and wanted to make a change. But I had this this feeling that, well, I'm 30 years old now. I felt old at that point, and that I'd worked in one company for so long. But what you need to emphasize if you've worked with one organization for a long time are the different roles that you've done within that business. Because it's very rare that somebody starts in one job and continues in that one job. They normally move around and do other things. So it's important to lay out the CV in such a way that it emphasizes the different roles you've done at that same company. Really highlight, I would suggest in bullet point format, the responsibilities that you had when you were in that role or multiple roles, and then highlight some of the achievements, how you've progressed. Try and make your CV the showcase of your experience. That can be really appealing. And let's not forget that these days loyalty is something that's not seen very much. And so there's nothing wrong with emphasizing the fact that you've been with one business for a long time, as long as you don't leave it too long and become institutionalized. I think that's the key thing. But on the CV, it's all about role, responsibilities, achievements across the different roles that you've done.
Now you say it, actually, it's not as difficult as, because I've kind of been in that position before in the past. And so you're always thinking, second guessing yourself, do I want to put that on there? Is that too much is that too much relevant? Do people want to know that? Also, at the same time, what are some of the most common mistakes people over 40 can make on their CV that you might have come across in the past, for example?
Well, let's not make that an age thing. Let's just let's make it a person thing, right? So, I went through a CV earlier on for a senior executive in the US who finds himself on the job market. He's a bit older as well, and I could tell when I was interviewing him a couple of days ago that he's got a concern about that. And he said, "Could I send my CV to you and you have a look at it?" What did I see? I saw a CV that had lots of different things bolted onto it. So people copying and pasting from old documents.
Right.
There are formatting errors in the actual document itself. I saw about 3 different font sizes and shapes and styles in the document. If you can't be bothered taking some time on your resume, your CV, to make sure that it looks good, there are no spelling mistakes in it, wrong dates that don't match up with what you're saying on LinkedIn. These are all things that are very, very common mistakes. People get lazy. They get lazy and complacent. And what I've noticed over the years, as people get older, what they tend to do is they use the CV that they had when they were in their 20s and they're adding bits to it. And the more they add to it, you're creating almost like a Frankenstein's monster of a document. It just doesn't look professional. So normally the biggest mistake that people make is just not taking the time to check it. Be old-fashioned. If you've got a CV, print it out, get a ruler, go through it line by line, then you'll spot the mistakes. I think taking care of the CV is probably the lack of care on CV is probably the most common mistake. But how that manifests itself when it goes to a customer or a potential buyer of you as a person is in that they'll spot those mistakes and they'll say, well, why would I take somebody on that can't even take care of their own advert for themselves in that document?
You're right. Having an eye for detail, always important.
That's it.
And also talking about with this, as I mentioned earlier, AI and technology. This day and age, technology seems to be coming out every 2 minutes. Blink and there's something new. So how can you demonstrate your adaptability to new industries or new technologies on your CV in a way that can come across quite succinctly for a potential recruiter or an employer?
Well, AI has been around a long time, and it used to be called machine learning, and there are differences between the two. But I would say it probably depends on the kind of role that you're going for. If you're in a situation where you're coming out of a particular type of role and it's not related to the types of roles that you want to go for, let's say you've made a switch, you want to get into more of a technology type role, you want to get on that AI bandwagon, you're going to have to show that you've language in the CVs, using the right terminology,
Right.
using things like large language models. Large language models is a way of describing what AI is. The acronym is LLM. So if you're using those kind of things, and you mentioned earlier, when we were talking offline about you doing project management, well, emphasize the fact that you've got great project management skills, and if you have, what type of project management skills are they? Is it agile? Are you a scrum master? All of these kind of different pieces of terminology that would be appropriate. And if it's more a role, let's say, you might be switching into sales. I mean, show that you've done some research into some of the sales methodologies like Challenger or target account selling or MEDDIC. There's lots of those. I'm not saying you should tailor your CV for every role, but you certainly should try and use the language that any potential employer might use themselves. And it's quite easy to do because you can look at the way that they've written their adverts, see what language they've used, try and match and mirror. I'm not saying change your skills, because when you get into an interview process, what you're going to find is that you'll get found out if you're lying. But if you want to demonstrate you've got an aptitude for new industries, you need to show that you've done some learning, training courses, some reading, and you can refer to that in your actual CV.
You can add jargon, but it has to be the right, relevant jargon. Don't over jargonize it. Okay.
That's it. Don't over jargonize it. When I'm looking for you as a candidate, I'm looking for keywords. And so what people tend to do is they tend to put every single keyword in there, and you can't possibly have 1,000 skills. It's not. But you need to try and tailor it and be smart so that you're not just applying for. Lots of people apply for jobs on LinkedIn, and they don't even really know what they're applying for. I actually have spoken to many candidates replying to their application and said, "You just applied for a job," and they say, "Oh, which one is it?" They're not really thinking, "I really want this job, and I'm going to showcase my experience that is transferable from my previous life."
The other one, big one, is should we show all our work history, or should we just focus on a particular period, so the last 5-10 years, or as you said, experience, certain age, you have it, you want to show it off in the right way, but what's the happy medium?
Don't make the CV too long, right? So you need to showcase the bulk of your career. So if you've done 13 years in a company or 5 years in a company, and that's why would you miss that? Why would you miss that off, even if it was your first job? So you can try and put your CV together, showcasing your really good experience where you're really proud of it. And then you can put at the bottom, you can put other experience, and you can maybe list the companies and the length of time and shorten it, and you can expand on it when you get to the actual interview. People are interested in the path you've taken to get where you are right now. But don't worry about making mistakes. When I first started in my career, you started somewhere, you stuck with it. People didn't move around. There was no LinkedIn. There was more loyalty. Everybody thought you had to stick with one business and progress your way through. It's not like that anymore. So I wouldn't worry too much if you've been a long time at a company and then had a couple of short stints at places. It doesn't matter. At least you've shown the adaptability to go and maybe work in a startup or a scale up or something different. It's when you stick with a company for 25 years and then you try and make a change that makes it difficult, because they feel that you might be institutionalized. But then you can talk about all of your different jobs that you've done in that 25 years for the same group, because you probably had quite a wide variety.
That makes a lot of sense. Thank you. How important does network play in helping you secure new opportunities at this stage in one's life? What type of networks should we look to be part of?
With the networking piece, a lot of that is online now. People are using different media to keep themselves relevant and push information out. Older people tend to be Facebook users. You've got to remember that LinkedIn is not Facebook, but networking within LinkedIn is really important. So having followers, people that follow you, Once they follow you, you can then start to send out really relevant content and hook those people in a bit more. So the networking can start to happen online without you really needing to do much. But also, if you're changing industries, there are quite a lot of expos aligned with industry. So, for example, when you want to meet people, you can go and network. They have social events afterwards. They have round tables. You've got the ability to be able to be side by side with potential employers rather than just sending a CV in. Can tend to be a bit of a black hole. All of these organizations now have software that scans the CV, and so most of the time you're being screened out. But people became very agoraphobic after COVID. We're now seeing people getting back into the workplace, back into the office environment. We still value the networking, the face-to-face, the events, going to circulate with like-minded people. So I would say it's important, but it's not everything.
My other question is, what's the best way to showcase continued learning or professional development on your CV without employers thinking, okay, this guy's perpetually learning and never stops?
It's an interesting one because when you're going for an interview, quite often senior people will say to you, "What was the last business book you read?" It might be a motivational book, or it could be something to do with business. It might be a novel, could be. But what it does is it enables that interviewer to form a picture of that person. Quite often I see on CVs, recent books that have been read, if they're relevant to what's going on. So if you're, for example, looking to try and get into AI, why not have read a book about AI? Why don't you list the courses that you've done, the people that you follow, companies you follow? I would say your LinkedIn profile is key to this because you've got more freedom to kind of put more information about you personally. And make it a bit more social than just a rigid black and white CV. Talk about the most recent things that you've done to improve your skills, the qualifications you may have gleaned by doing some correspondence courses or Open University, or anything that you've done to retrain yourself, where you can say, I would like to get into this field, and this is what I've already done about it behind the scenes, is going to definitely be beneficial, because so many people say they want to do something, they don't always deliver on it. I say there's a thing called desire and will. So most people have the desire to change. Not many people have the will to do what it takes to actually make the change.
Great, desire and will. I like that.
Yeah, I use it a lot.
The other question I have for you, Kevin, is, and this is quite a big one, what's the best way to address lack of formal qualifications? We need to get all the qualifications in the world before we can apply for a certain role, but maybe that's not what the employer is looking for, as necessarily. Having all that qualification might not necessarily mean you can do it all,
Keep that really simple. You've got to address it, right? So you have to address the fact I personally don't have any formal qualifications, but if you looked at my backgrounds and the various jobs that I've done, my sales experience, my sales leadership experience, the courses that I've done, the things that I've studied as a working adult, have equipped me brilliantly to be very successful and run my own company. I asked them if they thought I should do an MBA, and he said, "You've already done it." This all comes back to showcasing where your experience, the experience that you can bring. What you can bring is the courses that you've been on in your professional career, or the personal development. Personal development is really important because it is personal. Things that you've done personally in your own time to improve your skills. I'm not a big reader. I made a decision at Christmas to read books this year. I've read 5 in 3 months. That's a lot. I don't think I've read 5 books in the last 10 years. I read a book called Atomic Habits. I highly recommend it. And it talks about just making those small changes. So you can continually learn and show that you're learning. And it goes back to what I was saying earlier on about showcasing the things that you have done rather than emphasizing the things that you haven't. But if you haven't got a degree and they want a degree, hide that, but if you got to that point where you're talking to them, then they're probably past that point anyway.
Thank you for that, Kevin. That's really
All
helpful.
right.
What advice would you have for someone who wants to write a very compelling personal statement, and how important is a cover letter?
Okay, well, I think I'm old fashioned, right? So I like the cover letter. If you think about your own personal statement, it's something that people find very difficult to do. How do they tell people how great they are in a few lines? I would recommend they go on to ChatGPT, but make sure that you tailor it. It's got to be high impact. You got to tell them who you are, what you've been successful at, what your personality is like, and you've got to try and get all of that into one opening statement. Because remember, I said earlier on, right at the beginning, if you don't get that statement right, they're not going to read the rest of it. And it's that opening statement that captures the interest. Don't make it emotional. Don't use slang. Keep it professional. Don't waffle. You can use technology to help you. And if you haven't got access to the technology, I'm sure any 40-year-old probably would. But if you haven't, then find somebody who has. Get them to try and help you with it.
Thank you so much for that once again. And finally, what should you prioritize when you're applying for a role in an industry you've never been in before?
Yeah, I mean, it's difficult, right? But the key thing is to go back to what we said a bit earlier on. It's all about the transferable skills. So what skills have you got that you can lift up and transfer somewhere else? I always think it's important when you applying for a role that maybe you've never done before, or where you're trying to change, you've got to have real substance behind why it is you're interested in that role. Any potential employer is going to be thinking, yeah, it's all right. I put this person in. They want to change industries, but what if they don't like it? Can I really afford to take the risk on somebody that may not stick it out? And that's one of the key things I think that need to kind of emphasize. You can do that by showing that you've done it before, where you've moved roles before internally, maybe, and you've lifted up the skills that you've got. You might be a really good communicator. You might be really well organized. You might be good with numbers. You might be good with people. You might be good at managing a project. Well, you need to show examples of where you've done that, and having solid, firm examples is really the key thing to convincing any potential employer that you can make a change and take things in a different direction.
Well, Kevin, thank you so much for having this conversation with us. It's been really helpful. I can't thank you enough, because some of the questions you've answered, every other day I'm coming across it amongst people I know, reading it from other media sources. So this has been very invaluable information you shared with us, Kevin. Really appreciate this.
That's my message to everybody. Don't give up.
That's right. Thank you so much.
Pleasure. Nice to see you.